going to get started. I think most of you are here. My goal today, whoops, why is that not working? There we go. My goal today is to finish off 2.3 and to start 2.4. I won't say anything about 2.4 until we finish this, mostly because I don't like section 2.4. It's kind of something we have to do because we have to do it. And well, you'll find out when we get to it. But let's continue with this. We're going to really just finish off. How do you find limits of functions using algebra? There are 4 techniques you can evaluate. You can factor and cancel. And I think we've done plenty of them, so I'm not going to do any of those today. We're going to do, oops, conjugate method. And then we're going to finish with what I'm going to call is using algebra to simplify. So I'm going to do a couple of these guys, but most of today is going to be on those, right? And then once that's finished and we're all happy about that, we'll get started on section 2.4. Now, let's show you a conjugate method question. Okay, there we go. In this question here, how do I know I'm going to use this technique called the conjugate? What is just screaming out saying, use conjugate method, use the conjugate method?
The square roots.
What's the clue? Square roots. All right. And the reason why I kind of maybe push that a little bit, especially the conjugate method, is that when you get a limit to do, there are 4 techniques, right? And although all 4 techniques you might be comfortable with, don't you have to know which one of the 4 is the right one to use? Otherwise, you won't be able to do the question, right? If you try to do one of the other 3 techniques on this, it wouldn't work. So hopefully you kind of just know by looking that since this has a square root in it, in fact, it has 2 square roots in it, that it's going to be what we call the conjugate method, which essentially is multiply by special version of 1, right? Now, in this particular question, the 2 bottom terms are left completely untouched. There is no advantage to foiling these guys out. In fact, if you foil them out, you just make your life much harder than it needs to be. But the 2 terms, the guy that you use to get the conjugate and the conjugate, these are always going to be multiplied. And you can foil it out, and that's fine if that's what it takes. But there is a shortcut, isn't there? It's the first guy squared, take away the second guy squared. You remember that? Because it's essentially a difference of 2 squares. First term squared, subtract second term squared. So if you multiply this guy by itself, you get 2x add 7. Take away, if you multiply this guy by itself, you get 4x plus 1. And you notice I put a bracket around it to emphasize first guy squared, take away second guy squared. And if you don't like that, just do the old-fashioned FOIL. The 2 terms in the middle all cancel out, and that's what you get left. Now, in the next step, I'm going to see what we can do to sort out the top. So we have 2x add 7, take away a 4x, take away a 1. That take away that is negative 2x. And that take away 1 is plus 6. And we know from past experience when we've done the conjugate method, shouldn't this x minus 3 get cancelled out? Because essentially that's causing a 0 in the bottom, and we don't want a 0 in the bottom. But I assume you've hit a little roadblock, just a little one. But right now, nothing's cancelling, right? So if you look at the numerator, the top, is there anything that we can do to help this progress move along?
You can take out a -2.
Now, when you take out a -2, are you happy about where the x minus 3 is coming from? If you take out -2 as a common factor, that becomes x, but doesn't this become -3? And now we've got that cancelled that we know has to happen, right? There's no way of avoiding it. It must happen or the process is, you're just not going to be able to get an answer if it doesn't. So you know it has to happen. So now we're looking at the limit as x tends to 3, -2 on the top, and this guy plus this guy. But we don't mind that, because can't we just plug in x equals 3 and we'll get an answer and we're finished? So let's see what I get. If you plug in 3 here, you get the square root of 13. If you plug 3 in here, you get the square root of 13. And we have that. And I call this style points. Style points just means make the answer as simple as possible so that everybody in the world would probably eventually write down the same thing as you. Is there anything I can do to the fraction here? Go for the obvious.
Divide by 2.
Yeah, cancel out the 2's. And I think we had a discussion about this, at least with one of the 2 calc classes. WebAssign might take that, and then again, it might not take that. And I strongly suggest that you always rationalize the denominator anyway, because I know it will take that. You happy about what I did there? Root 13 top and bottom, right? So always try, if possible, to make the bottom a number, right? Try and avoid having square roots on the bottom. Are we good? And I said I was going to do 2, so that's one of them. So I've decided to pick, because I can, the ugliest looking conjugate method I can think of. And I'm working on the idea that if you can do the worst looking one, won't all the others be easy? Right? So if you can do the worst version of it. So this one is going to have everything I can think of that makes it awkward. So we're going to have the limit as x tends to 2 of x minus 2. Nothing too scary about that. Square root of x plus 7. Take away the square root of x squared plus 5. Yeah, that's pretty ugly. oh, I've decided to be really, really, really cruel. I'm just going to do the next line, and then you'll see what I'm getting at. Would you agree this is the conjugate method? And is it the conjugate, these two square roots with a plus? So the square root of x add 7 plus the square root of x squared add 5. Square root of x add 7 plus the square root of x squared add 5. And here's this nasty thing. You got 3 minutes. Figure out how to solve that one. Starting now. No pressure. 3 minutes. You're probably looking at an ugly quadratic right now that you somehow have to figure out a way to fact. And you got 1 minute. No, you don't. You have 1 minute to go. Okay, we'll start working through and you can catch up at whatever point you got to. Right, so we're looking at, let's get some windows out the way here so I can see all your faces. There we go. So you got this guy times its conjugate. Now the shortcut is, isn't it basically the first guy squared, take away the second guy squared, right? So this guy times himself gets you x add 7. Take away this guy times himself is x squared plus 5. So the first mistake you may have made is right here by not recognizing that both of these are being subtracted. Now, if you combine like terms, the 7 take away 5 gets you 2. Right, so you should be looking at a line with an awkward quadratic. What's awkward about it? The only thing that's really awkward is that negative x squared, doesn't it? And so to fix it, you pull out a negative. So I got nods, so that means some of you at least got that far, and that might have been the roadblock for some of you. So you can kind of fill it in while I'm doing this as well. Well, if you forget about the negative for a minute, because it's there, but we used it, can't you just factor that in the good old-fashioned trinomial way? And the good news is that don't we get the cancel that we wanted? So what we're now looking at is the limit as x tends to 2 of a negative x plus 1 over an x add 7 plus an x squared add 5. And although that looks pretty ugly, it has one strong advantage. Can't you just plug 3 in and get the answer? There is no problem with the top line. It's negative 3 add 1, which is 4. 2 add 7 is 9, square root of 9 is 3. 2 squared add 4 is 9, square root of 9 is 3. And we get negative 4/6, which is negative 2/3. Did you get there? Did some of you get there, at least I hope?
What happened to the
Now,
plus
that is
5 and
not a typical question. Say that again,
what
Skylar.
happened to the plus 5 and the x squared?
Oh, 7, take away 5, became 2.
I meant the one.
That's what I'm doing. If that's a,
Maybe I'm just
say again, Skylar.
because on the bottom you have the square root of x plus 5. So wouldn't it be 3 squared is 9 then plus the 5? Or am I just
No, it's 2 squared is 4
Yeah.
plus 5
Oh.
is 9.
okay? Why did I think?
It's not 3, it's 2. That was all that was. As I was saying, this is not likely to be a typical homework question. This is a lot harder. But I like it because I had everything I could think of wrong with it. Most times you just have a negative factor that you have to deal with or a quadratic that you have to deal with. But when you put these together, it's kind of fun. Now, we know the answer is negative 2/3. I'm going to show you how we can check that. So on my calculator, I'm going to put in y equals the original function. So it's bracket, the square root of, where are you? X plus 7. Take away the square root of x squared plus 5.
If you could read the chat, I think they were onto what I was confused about.
Oh, okay. Let me see where, I don't have any chat. So I'm going to have to find chat. So I'm going to leave this for a second. Where's chat?